I want you to think back. Think back at the first time when you shared your true romantic feelings with someone you really liked. Okay, so think back, and if you have not done that yet, then think forward to the time that you will share your romantic feelings with someone you like. So think directly before the words left or will leave, as they leave or will leave, and after they've left or will leave. Just take a few seconds to think about that moment. And now I'd like to share with you a time when I did that. It was August of 7th, 2018, Tuesday night. A beautiful romantic summer evening, and I was walking along a certain arm of the Fraser River with a beautiful woman. When I close my eyes, I see her wearing this bright sleeveless top and a flowery skirt. And we're walking, and I know that within 10 minutes, the time will come for us to part ways. And there's only one thing going on in my mind. Aaron, are you going to say those words you've practiced the whole of last night? That was the main voice, but there were certain other voices. Aaron, what if those words don't come out? What if those words come out, but she rejects you? You've never had a girlfriend before. You're 31 years old. How often has sharing your true feelings on the first date worked? You already know the answer to that. But no, anyway, negative voices did not have much time to come in because now 10 minutes in, we both walk to this beautiful spot and now we both are facing the Fraser River. And it's perfect. I was like, at some point we will turn into facing each other before we part ways. And once she turns and once I turn, it's game on. So we turn, I take a deep breath and say, Sarah, I think I'm really attracted to you. The first step, the words are now out. And then she pauses and says, really? Shall we make out then? I know you might be wondering, am I actually making this up? And no, she actually did say it. Shall we make out? This was the response I had not planned for. Over the past decade, all I got was the let's just be friends speech. I was like, oh, we need to take a minute. And we sit down on a log, and I say, you know what? We're part of the same group, and we meet each other on a weekly basis. Will this make things weird? And then she thought, no. So we obviously made out. It was awkward, but I was like, oh, this is actually happening. At the end, I was like, oh, the night is still young. We should probably move this to a private place. And she said, yeah. So now we hold hands. We feel like I feel like a teenage boy. And then we walk to this private place, and we now open up. We open up. I was like, oh, were you giving me hints all these months that you liked me? She's like, yeah. And you finally got them. to ask me out on this date. Great. And now the 20 minutes go into 4 hours, and yes, we did get sexual too. But now that was just the first date, right? A great setup, but I was like, if that was hard, the second date was scheduled to be 10 times more difficult because I had more words to share with her, which would open me up to even more potential rejection. At 24, I read this blog post called polyamory. Poly means many, and amor means love. So many loves. The concept is that you can share love and sex and friendship with multiple partners. I was like, oh, I was raised Catholic. This does cause some problems with that belief system. And as a guy who's never had even a single girlfriend before, this has not come at the right time. And if you're anything like me, you love pushing the boundaries of what you've grown up with. So I was like, great. At 24 and still single and never having been in any relationship, I was like, yes, I'm going to give this a try. There's only one problem with it. No one in your circle thinks it's a remotely good idea. So now from 24 to 31, I go on dates and tell women, you know, I would like to see you and other women too. And that was the first and last date. Okay, so now from August 7th, we go to 7 days later. It's the day before the date, and I text to confirm. Hey, are we still on for tomorrow night? No response. The morning of the date, hey, I'm just making sure that you received my text last night. No response. At 4 p.m., I was like, hey, just want to make sure you receive my last 2 texts. No response. The date was at 7, and now I'm just like, what happened? I call my best friend and say, you know what, this, you know what happened on the first date? Why isn't she responding to my texts? He's like, well, that's the single woman in Vancouver. One day she likes you, the next day she ghosts you. And now I'm nearly shattered because this was not any average date. It's very rare to ask for a woman to ask you to make out. But I said the last throw of the dice will be I will call her at 6 p.m. and hour before. So I call. Your call is now gone to voicemail. I was like, oh, has she blocked my number as well? At this point, I'm just shattered, and I leave my phone on the bed. I was like, okay, great. At least the 4 hours that we had were good, and better luck next time. 5 minutes later, she calls. I was like, Sarah, are we still on? He's like, yeah, we're still on. Like, what? Okay, I'll just drive over to meet you. We'll drive over and say, you didn't respond to any of my texts. He said, I did not receive any of your texts until you called. So they came in once you hung up. And then I was like, thank God I made that call. Otherwise, I would have just lost this beautiful second date. Big lesson. If you really want clarity, pick up the phone. Okay, so now the Emotions are already high, and I say, you know what, you already know, because I've been very public in my social circle that I'm into non-monogamous relationships, but I have to ask you, are you fine with this? Are you fine with me dating, having sex, and potentially also developing feelings for other women? She paused and said, you know what? I already knew that. But yes, I would be fine with it. I would be fine with it. So this was now 6 years of skill building to get this first yes. And then I said, you know what, that's great. And if you want to do the same, you're welcome to do so, as long as we keep the communication going. He said, great. And it was a great second date. And now, over the next few dates, there was always that fear, given the fact that she did not respond to those texts, that will this end before it even begins? Thankfully, the third date went to the fourth, to the fifth, to the sixth, to the seventh, and a few months in, the 2 nights we used to spend per week now went to 3 nights to 4 nights, and I found out that I was now spending more time at her place than at mine. And it was a great match because we both had enough similar to ensure compatibility, but we had enough different to ensure growth. And I was like, wow. And the defining moment was, it wasn't anything mind blowing, but there was one time when I went over to her place, and my clothes were not in the place that I usually used to put them. And I said, Sarah, where are my clothes? She's like, oh, they're in the place they now belong. I go open her closet, and in a neat little pile, my clothes were there folded. And that physical movement of the clothes and the love that I felt signified the transition from people who were dating to now people who were very much in a full-blown romantic relationship. And that really stood out to me. On February 14th, 2019, I celebrated my very first Valentine's Day with her at 32 years old. Talk about being a late bloomer. And it was beautiful. It was magical. I was like, you know what? It took so long. But I had to grow into the man who could attract someone so spectacular. I wanted to experience something like this at 13. It took 18 long years for it to happen at 31. And the one main lesson I learned was to trust life unconditionally. I see life as a dance partner that changes, a dance partner that challenges, a dance partner that does not want you to settle and will keep pushing you to your very limits. I grew up with a stutter, as you can tell, developed at 9. I moved to Canada when I was 18, and I could not say my own name. It took many years to get over the fact that the stutter does not mean that I'm not worthy of love. Second, I had no clue that I would read that blog post on having multiple partners and how strongly that would resonate with me. And then finally, with all this information, I didn't know how. How does a man share his feelings, his sexual feelings, his romantic feelings with a woman? And that's when I found my dating coach, Alan Roger Curry, who said, "Let the women know what you're really thinking." And his coaching really put the rail in really thinking. And so that relationship was great. Waited for a long time for it. And for those who've already experienced this, I hope you found this cute. And for those who have not, I hope this gives you inspiration that yes, it may take 18 years or longer, but you really have to trust that this path will lead you to one of the most exciting things that life has to offer. I speak from direct experience.
Awesome. You got it out.